Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people looking to live life at their peak potential. Chock full of real-world tools and knowledge that you can apply in your life today. By providing you with a lens into the lives, beliefs, practices, and actions of those who are already living extraordinary lives, the Performance Enhancing Podcast will help you shift your mindset or create that change in your daily rituals and habits so you can explode with success in the areas of life that are most important to you. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. We're about to delve into part 2 of my interview with Kim Ades, where she was generous enough to bring out a journal of one of her clients. Obviously, we kept it very anonymous. And then her and I go back and forth as if we were coaching this person. So these have been fan favorites. Obviously, you get two different perspectives from two different coaches on how to improve one's life, how to find patterns of limiting beliefs in your life. So if you haven't listened to part one, definitely go back and do that so you can actually hear the journal entry. So this all makes sense to you. And then come back here where we'll delve deeper into her relationship with her kids, her relationship with her mom, and overall the sense of humor that she must bring to life. So enjoy part 2 of my interview with Kim Ades.
Now, there's one more piece to this journal, which I think is super interesting. And that is, how does she raise her kids? How does that work? And, obviously she's having challenges with her kids and they're behaving in ways that she doesn't know how to handle.
Yeah.
And so you and I talked about this last time, which is, how do you raise your kids? And very often parents believe that their job is to discipline their children, to kind of reprimand them or praise them when they're doing something right or wrong. And I think it's a bit misguided.
Yeah.
And really the question is, well, how come this child isn't interested in being on time?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting question. Why is it okay for this child to be late? And explore that question altogether. And so really have a different kind of interaction with the child that allows him to take control over their timing rather than there needing to be a big fight, at the last hour.
Yeah.
So to me, 3 parts need to happen. One is this whole relationship with the mother, the sense of humor that she clearly is missing, and why she's so tight about things, why everything's so uptight, tense for her. And then how do you raise your kids? And underneath all of that is how she sees herself as a mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, what I see in this story is there's no manual on raising kids. So unless you're actively out there trying to better yourself, and I loved what you said, I think it was on our first call, where you're like, it's called parenting, not children-ing.
Not childing, right?
I share with everyone because I just think it's so brilliant and it's so simple. The only thing, Cesar Millan, the guy that, the dog whisperer.
Yep.
Like, he walks into these people's homes. He never deals with the dog, ever. He only deals with the parents of the dog.
That's right.
And so it just makes me realize that your energy, the way you are with your kids, will have them be a very specific way. Now, I'm hearing this. She grew up in a household with this kind of mom who was obviously very vocal, told her always had an opinion about how she should live her life. And that's the way that she sees it. So the only way that she could really be with her children, unless she was to completely learn a new skill set or try something new, is going to be very much in line with the way that she was raised. And I don't know that she necessarily sees it as not working because it's very them. Like, it's them doing this to me.
That's right.
With very little control over anything. And that's where I would definitely work with someone. It's like, look, if you're going to be in this, it's a 50-50 relationship thing, it's just not going to work.
It's not even a 50-50 relationship thing. So, here's another example. People come to me and they have maybe marital discord, and they say, my husband is doing this and this and this. He's not making me happy. And I say, okay, would you like to work on that? And the question then becomes, well, shouldn't we do this together? Shouldn't we do relationship coaching? Yeah. And my answer is always no. It doesn't take two to tango. It only takes one. Let me explain that. If you're literally dancing with someone and one person changes the moves, what happens? The dance changes. It's not the same anymore. And so what I always say is, look, I don't need the other person at the table. When you have conflict or tension with your husband or your wife, it's usually a function of your thinking. And when your thinking starts to shift, the relationship automatically starts to shift, because your behaviors start to shift, because you're reacting and responding to the things that are coming your way in a very, very different manner. And so to me, it's never a 50-50 relationship. It's always 100 and 100. That's
it. Yeah, that's, I was... at Rosh Hashanah, everyone always does the let's create this year and this year and this year and this year. And my whole thing was like, look, without action, nothing works, right? So you guys can all say these beautiful things, but I know whether it's this or New Year's resolutions, nothing ever gets done, or very little gets done, because no one takes action. And it's because of that, like for me, it's 0, 100. 100 me, 0, any situation, person, whatever. If you come from there, you have power in that. If you come from even 95.5, there's always this little bit that you're waiting for something out there to happen so that you can reach this whatever. And it's like, that never happens, ever. You can make shifts and it will alter around you, but that's internally. And everyone's just always looking out there.
Right. Well, and you're exactly right. What you're saying is, what it boils down to is, it's really important for people to take responsibility for their own happiness and not wait for somebody else to behave a certain way, to show up a certain way, to deliver a certain something in order for you to respond in a happy way.
Yeah.
And so that's really the key. And in this case, with this woman, her children aren't making her happy and her mother's not making her happy. And I'm sure that if, we looked at other areas, a whole bunch of other things wouldn't be making her happy. Yeah. And so for her, the children and the mother are their context. So if I were coaching her, I would work on those issues only because they're the context for us to understand her thinking, as opposed to trying to fix those issues in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Really, the thinking is related to how she sees herself in the world and how she holds other people responsible for her happiness.
Yeah, 100%. So in this particular scenario, where do you go first? Is it the children? Is it the mom? Is it her internal dialogue about her self-worth or not being good enough or whatever it is?
It's all of that. In terms of order, I would probably start with humor, the mother, boundaries, the child, and then her personally, in that order.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is there a specific reason?
Because what we want to do is, and again, I'm going to go back to something you said, and just in terms of the style we use for coaching, while she's looking at her mother and she's looking at all the things that her mother does that bothers her, and she's probably, a product of that and, a mirror to her mother, I don't need to go there, because what she sees in her mother is not pretty. So she's already having a low self-concept. And so I don't need to kick the dog when the dog is down, if that makes any sense.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I might do that down the road when her sense of self-esteem has gone up a little bit. But that's not where I would go first. My job is to really help her gain confidence in herself as a mother and not worry about what her mother thinks about her parenting, and to let go of the need to control her children or anything else for that matter, and allow her mother to be her quirky self and appreciate the humor. Yeah. So the whole journey is for her to learn to relax. And then when she's ready to kind of go more deeply into the process of, analysis or whatever, just exploring this whole idea of personal growth, then we might forge into looking at how those people that irritate you are really, a bit of a reflection of yourself.
Mm-hmm. So with the humor side of it, is it just to have her see the things that her mom say as humorous versus this attachment to them being, negative commentary about her being a bad mom?
Well, that's definitely something I would do. But even look, if you told me a story and I said, hey, that's funny, all of a sudden you would say, is it funny? Like, let me look at it. Right? So you would take on the funny glasses for a minute and say, let me see through these lenses if in fact it's funny and I miss the humor. And so just opening that up a bit, I don't have to sit there a whole long time, but just having her be open to the idea that this whole interaction is actually ridiculously funny.
Do you ever, I know this is kind of like a cliche method, but do you ever bring up if you were to die in a week, like, would this stuff really bother you? Because sometimes we get so wrapped up in the minutia.
Yeah.
But if like Angel of Death came down and was like, hey, sweetie, you have a week left to live, like, get your shit in order. All of a sudden, all this stuff, like her kid going to the bathroom and like her mom, all goes out the window.
Yeah. And I mean, do I ever use this? What I do, sometimes I'll say, does this actually matter in the grand scheme of life?
Yeah.
Sometimes what I do is I say, you know what, pretend you're 80, pretend you're 85. Looking back, will you be happy or sad that you took this action? Like, for me, a lot of people get paralyzed. And what I want them to do is kind of put on that older, wiser hat on and say, like, what am I so afraid of? Or I'm going to be frustrated that this was such a big deal to me right now. So I often do that. But
very smart.
Yeah. But the other part of it is, you said, like, will it matter to me if I have a week left to live? Well, here's an even more interesting question. If your mother died tomorrow,
yeah,
would this matter?
Yeah. That was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen happen. So when I had that interaction with my dad, certain people have insights about people that have passed, and we all had to write a letter, like, to the person that we had this thing with, and I just watched as people had to write letters to parents who have passed on, and the amount of pain and anguish and I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, granted, there was a release, obviously, in the forgiving or the letting go or whatever the hell it was that they had to go through. But the fact that they couldn't do that with the human being, the fact that they had to do it in letter, was excruciating for me to watch, but for them to experience, because I know, yes, you can do all that letting go, but the next thing that comes up is, wow, I just pissed away X amount of time with this person that can't ever get that back. It's so fascinating to me how or why human beings are so programmed to have this, like, we will live forever mentality. That cliche of like, live every day as it's your last. It's great in theory, but like, I don't know anyone that lives life that way. There might be a very small percentage.
Honestly, I don't know if your last day is ever the best day. So I don't know. Like, honestly, I don't know. I don't know if that statement makes any sense at all. But live your life. Like, be present, be whole, be grateful, enjoy it, suck it up. I call it milk your day, milk your moments, right? People get stuck because they really, really get distracted by all the things that are just not exactly perfect. And the whole idea is, somebody asked me a question the other day about balance. That was the question. They asked me, like, do you help your clients get work-life balance? And I said, I don't know. I think balance is a little overrated. And the reason is because what I'm really interested in doing is helping people find the thing that lights them up and helping them to live their life mostly there. That's what I'm interested in doing. And that's not necessarily balanced.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, and that's exactly aligned with the concept of milking your life, milking your moments, squeezing the most out of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I heard this little parable about this, all these stories about like the angel of death, and he comes down and he's like, all right, you have one day to live. And the person's like, what, just give me a week. Just give me, can I get one more week? And he looks at him and is like, well, I gave you 52 this year alone, and 52 the year before. What were you doing?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I just feel like sometimes people think that this is practice life. Like their real life hasn't started. They're like building up to something. And SatoriPrime, that's really what we do also. We want to awaken people's passion and have them break down the walls to what they believe is possible and just live there, not waiting for some event to happen so that now they can be this thing. It's like, be that thing now.
Yep.
And enjoy it. And I think we get distracted. Like, this story to me is distraction. It's dealing with the minutia so you don't have to deal with what there really is to deal with, which is, share your light with the world, be there for others, love, and all these things. And then you get trapped in all these things. And I always ask, like, why are we programmed to do this and not be our highest, greatest, most beautiful selves? Like, why do we have to work so hard at that, and that this is the natural path?
Well, because you know what, the whole deal is to, if I look at the day-to-day of my life, like, I have 5 kids. I'm got a lot on my plate, from, waking up in the morning and making sure everybody's in the right place, and coming home at night after a full day and preparing dinner. So, like, I have a regular, pretty domestic kind of life, but I don't live a domestic kind of mind, even in my domestic approach, right? So when we eat dinner, it's, what's the conversation like? When we clean up, what does that look like? When we hang out together, when we share the events of the day, when we joke around, when we laugh. And so the idea is to take the minutia and even that, suck the juice, suck the joy, right? Yeah. And really appreciate even those kind of day-to-day, minutia kind of activities.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think when you approach life with a certain zest for it, when you look for the miracles and everything, that's really what you get to see everywhere. And everything's an opportunity, and everything's an event. And for me, I think that's the muscle I try to work on most is, I call it being loving, but like being happy, being loving, whatever you really want to call it, moment by moment by moment. And by no means am I anywhere near perfect at it. But every day, what I try to do is be more in that space than in the other space. And when I get into the other space, to catch myself as quickly as I can to realize, this is not it. Shift. And it's instant. It's not this like process now. Granted, I've been doing this for 13, 14 years, right? It gets easier and better. And I think I've trained my soul, body, mind, I don't know, whatever, to be addicted to the good, that happy, loving feeling. Yeah. And so when I teeter in the other direction, I'm like, ugh, that doesn't feel so good anymore. And it makes me want to come back. Whereas before, in the minutia negative world that most people live, they don't even see that there's this other world yet. And so that's comfortable, that's known. And that's where they like to roll. And then it takes that little spark and that little opening, and you're like, ooh, there's this other way that you can live your life. And then it's, that.
Yeah, but you have the muscle, right? You've developed that muscle.
13,
You've done,
14 years.
Yeah, exactly. And so it doesn't come to everybody that naturally. I mean, some people are more predisposed, no question. It's easier for some than others, but it's still a muscle that gets exercised just like doing your abs, right? Like you want good abs, you got to work on them. And so this is the very, very same thing. And so sometimes we have a knee-jerk reaction to slide into our old habits. And so this is really, really about making a choice almost in every minute of every day that says, you know what, like I'm choosing to at least lean on the positive side of the equation, and to look at my environment and really extract what's good and right about it.
Yeah.
And that takes a certain dedication, determination, but in essence, a decision that that's the life you're going to live.
100%. My brother and I wanted to start a seminar called Lie to Me. And the idea was that we're all just lying to ourselves every single day of every single moment. It's all bullshit. It's just you pick the bullshit that you want to really believe. And unfortunately, when you tell people like, look for the good in something, they're like, yeah, but then I'm just lying to myself about it. I'm like, well, you're lying to yourself about it now also.
Yeah.
Right. Like this whole story that she has about her mom, that's a lie that she's bought hook, line, and sinker. And it has her live a very specific life.
Right.
She can go and tell herself a completely different lie and have a completely different life. And she'll eventually start believing that to be true. Yeah,
we make up stories all the time. And the stories we make up our lives. And so we get to choose the stories we can make up. You know, I often talk about, like, are there really bad things going on in the world? And the answer is yes. And then I say, well, are there some good things going on in the world? And the answer is also yes. And so what we choose to tune into, what we choose to pay attention to, will create our life experience. And so they equally exist, all right, but we still get to choose. And you can choose one or the other. But then when you look at your life experience and you say, well, why did it go this way? Well, it's because you've made decisions at every point along every day as you went along. Yeah. And so, you know, like this is the whole thing, is that some people have a very hard time letting go and making this choice.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're pulling them away from something that they're very, very used to, and something that's deeply ingrained in their DNA.
Well, you tie your identity to the framework that you make up. So, you know, it's almost like in this scenario, if she didn't have this issue with her mom, she wouldn't even know who that person is.
she wouldn't know who she is.
That's what I'm saying. She wouldn't, because like
to her mom.
Yeah. In her world, she has a nagging mom. Like that's her identity.
Right.
You take that away from her, and that person like loses balance. They're like, well, what do I do now?
Exactly. That's exactly correct.
But I think that's, you know, for me, what I love coaching people on is having them love that exploration, that they're not some fixed way, that they, you know, in the unknown is the magic of life. Because the known, it's like, you know where this is going. I don't have to tell you. You know exactly 20 years from now how that relationship is going to go. What if we just turned a little bit left and just let's see where that road goes?
You know, when you asked me before how, like, in terms of what order I would choose in order to coach her, and I kind of gave you the order, all along that process, I would introduce what we call the frame of mind principles, right? So, but one of the principles is that there's a concept that when you point your finger at someone else and say, you know, you're causing me to feel this way, you've become a puppet, and you said, here are the strings, you control me. And so part of coaching really is teaching people what they're doing and how what they're doing impacts them. Yeah. And when you frame it that way, you say, well, I don't want her to have control. I want to have control. And so the next time this similar situation happens, you just said, you know, I catch myself. What we're really teaching people to do is catch themselves faster and go, man, I just handed over my puppet strings again. You know, I got to stop doing that. You know, my mom can be how my mom wants to be. It's none of my business, really. It's her deal. It's not my deal. And if this is her way of expressing herself, so be it. If it were an old lady down the street and the old lady behaved that way, it would be easier to find funny. But for some reason, once it's your mother, it's not that funny anymore.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Well, I like those perspectives, you know, giving people that if it was just a woman off the street, how would you react? And I think that's a very, very clever way to look at any situation. If someone else was dealing with that situation, how would you look at it also? Kim, I know you have to run, but we'll definitely do this again for all the listeners. Thank you so much. Again, let people know where they can find you or if they're interested to find out more about this coaching.
Yeah, it's frameofmindcoaching.com, and I invite anybody who's listening to go to the website and try our complimentary Frame of Mind coaching experience. And what's really cool about it is you get to journal, and we get to read your journal and work with that journal in the coaching process. And a lot of people have said that just that one call alone has been really extraordinarily powerful. So I invite everybody, come on and try it.
Absolutely. I could not recommend it more highly enough. I don't know, but just go and do it. Kim, always an absolute blast. Super, super excited to do these, and we'll speak real soon.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on. I love talking to you.
Okay. Awesome. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to SatoriPrime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.
Did you run through doors till you hit the floor? Did you read my